So this is all wonderful, but when it comes to assessing the habits of mind, what can we do? How can we assess the students' habits of mind, James? What do you suggest?
Yeah, look, there's a shift to be made here. When I started working with the habits of mind, and I've worked, did that work in the state and around Australia and internationally, assessment was a big question. And we defaulted to a pattern of assessment that is the most natural thing in the world to do. We tried to assess the student's habit of mind. And we did that in one of two ways. We either created what I call big rubrics, which went from novice through to expert, that sort of thing, had 5 levels in between. And they were really useful. They were useful in helping teachers understand that we're trying to develop habits of mind, that it wasn't a case of using it, it was a case of improving the habit of mind. So that was useful to see that. But it wasn't terribly practical in classrooms. A novice to expert scale typically covers 5 levels. We've got at least 12 years of learning and then more above that of continuous learning. And so how quickly were students meant to move through that? It lost its power when we tried to apply it to a student. Then we went to what I call small rubrics. And small rubrics were about how are you engaging this habit of mind in this context right at this moment. And they were really useful for helping identify how students were engaging at a point in time, but were less useful for this sort of ongoing development. The other thing that the dominant assessment methods out there, or the approaches they took did, was to focus on the habit of mind. And as I reflect on my sort of 20-year journey with the habits of mind, I think we've focused on the habits of mind too much. Now, sitting here talking to you about a book about habits of mind, both being experts in habits of mind, and there's the mindfulness and thoughtfulness, having brought educators together that are making careers and contributing to the work around habits of mind, for me to say I think we've focused too much on the habits of mind might sound odd. So let me clarify what I mean. When Art Costa and Bennett Kalick identified the habits of mind, they identified them in high achievers. They basically looked at high achievers through other people's research and asked the question, said, you're the best at what you do. What are you doing? And they identified these patterns of behavior, and that's been a huge gift. I can't thank Art and Bennett enough for giving us the clarity around that. And since then, we've gone and said, well, what do these habits of mind mean? How do we work with them? How do we assess them? All the rest of it. But from the point of view of the people who are actually applying them, the people who we're looking at, the effective thinkers, what they cared about was what they were thinking about. All right, I think about it like this. I used the example before of my father and woodworking, craftsmanship. A woodworker, a craftsman doesn't care about their tools. What they care about is what they're creating, the end product, the problem they're solving. Their tools are their most important asset, don't get me wrong, but their tools are only as useful as what they allow them to create. And so when I say I don't care about the habits of mind, or I think we've focused too much on the habits of mind, what I think we need to be focusing on is what the habits of mind do for us, the problems they solve. Because you asked me, how do I talk about assessing? And the shift I make is from trying to assess the habits of mind directly by saying, how well developed are your habits of mind? And instead, I ask the question, are your habits of mind well enough developed? Because when you looked at those rubrics and particularly try to do things like, beginners to experts, I've got, 5-year-olds, 6, 7-year-olds that are behaving brilliantly, for the standard they're at. And by any reasonable definition, they're doing really well. And I've got other adults that not certainly much more well developed than their 5 or 6-year-old children, but not having the success that their children are having at that level. So the paradigm shift that I've introduced here is to stop asking how well developed are your habits of mind and instead ask, Are your habits of mind well enough developed to succeed at the problems you regularly encounter? And that brings us back to that idea of the learning zone, that are they getting you to the next level? Whether your level's here or here or here, are you working on your habits of mind in the right way to get you to that next level? And so I've developed a tool, what we're calling the Habits of Mind Learner Profile, excuse me, that allows you to assess your habits of mind in that way. And I'll just do a good old screen share again here, click here and do this. And what it does, online tool, oops, that's the wrong one. No, that's the right one, there it is. Got too many screens going on in front of me. Here we go, just drag this across. Whoops, what am I doing? Drag that across here, there we go. Now I can look at you and the profile at the same time. It gives you a picture of your habits of mind like this. Now, what the Habits of Mind Learner Profile does, it says it ranks your habits of mind from the most well-developed through to the least well-developed. And at the same time, it tells you, are the problems you're encountering with that habit of mind currently in your, what I call your comfort zone, which makes them orange, your performance zone, which makes it blue, your learning zone, which makes it green, or is it part of what we call your aspirational zone, or I refer to it as your zone of concern, that it's too far beyond your current abilities? The way I work with schools around this is that we get this snapshot, and it's remarkable how varied they are, of the students' habits of mind. And it allows us to say a whole lot of things. We can look at the overall colour. All right, we sometimes get profiles that are entirely orange. In fact, I'll leave it up there while we talk. And your first reaction is often that, oh yeah, we want ones that are all orange, all really well developed. But an orange profile is a profile of someone who's cruising. All their habits of mind, all the challenges they're facing are well within their current abilities. They're doing exceedingly well at all those challenges. And so they're not providing themselves with any opportunity for growth. And when we see an orange profile, what it tells us is, it says, well, why are you cruising? Are there no challenges in your environment? Are you avoiding challenges for some reason? Because I often come back to Morgan Freeman's quote where he said, challenge yourself. It is the only pathway to growth. And an orange profile says you're not being challenged at all. And so straight away, this mechanism of assessing habits of mind drives not only the assessment, but also the development of the habits by looking at this and saying how orange, how blue, how green is it, which habits of mind are in which zone, helps us ask questions that drive that ongoing development. We can look at the different colors, look at the different shapes. I talk about this space around the outside. That space tells you the room to grow that you're currently encountering. So in your environment as a general observation, have you got room to grow? And as a sort of rule of thumb, if about 1/3 to 1/4 of the area isn't grey, then you haven't got room to grow. We can look at, I said before about the lock and key analogy, that the problem is the lock and the habits of mind are the key that help you unlock that problem. We can look at problems and create what I call a problem profile, a habits of mind problem profile, and identify the habits of mind that are most critical to succeeding at that particular problem. And then we can come to a student's profile and go, well, let's look at your first quarter here. Do you have what it takes to solve this particular problem? And the app will actually allow you to take a class worth of these profiles, one for each student, compare it to your problem profile and say, yes, Avert, you've got this one covered. You seem to have really well-developed habits of mind that will cover this problem off. You should be okay here. Then we'll look at mine and say, James, look, you got 2 or 3 habits of mind that are probably going to serve you well here, but you've got a weakness. This is the habit of mind that's going to be the focus for your development during this problem. This is the one that's going to be the point for you to focus on. So it gives teachers, I'll just come out of here. It gives learners and it gives teachers a really unique way of looking at their development. I had a really interesting discussion, actually. I had a principal I was working with just yesterday who I was working with his school, and we're all doing the profiles. And this particular principal has just stepped up. It's an acting role. So he's been in an assistant principal role. And he did 2 profiles. He did it first, with the problems he's currently encountering. And he got a nice bluish, a little bit of green, a little bit of orange, but a lot of blue, high performer. And so that was the sort of profile he had. But one of the questions it asks at the end of the profile, it says, are the problems you're about to encounter about the same as you've done before, more difficult or less difficult? And he said, well, I'm stepping up. I'm going to go up a level. So he said the problems I'm about to encounter are more difficult than I've been encountering before. The impact that has on your profile is it squishes it. It raises the bar and it changes those things that were blue to green, and the green to red. And it gave him some real insight into, okay, the things I was leaning on before, they're now in my learning zone. I'm going to have some challenges here. It's going to be more difficult. And it helped him to identify, one, that the behaviors, these habits of mind, were what he needed to focus on as he stepped into this new role. And the specific order of them, as he looked at which habits of mind were going to be important in that role, gave him a real focus. And just the 10-minute conversation we had around that was so insightful and so powerful. The rest of it, I could go on for another hour about the conversations the other teachers were having about, how do we see this all the time, and how we talk to it was a girls' school, to the girls about this, and really powerful. So we're just getting schools on board at the moment with the Habits of Mind Learner Profile. If any of our listeners want to find out more about it, they can jump on my website, send me an email, james@jamesanderson.com.au. I'm happy to talk about them, because together with learnership, raising the status of learning from an act to an art, this idea of being able to assess our habits of mind in a way that drives their development, that doesn't just say this is where you're up to, but this is what you've got to do to keep going, I think is going to be a really, really powerful tool for schools.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a great tool, and I can see that the schools are more and more schools are benefiting from the Habits of Mind profile. And just to, I'm curious to learn about my Habit of Mind profile, and I can do that for myself. One person, I think I can do it as a free, right from your.
Yeah, the app is constantly evolving. So as we speak, you can go to habitsofmind.jamesanderson.com.au and jump on and have a go at it and see what comes up. Depending on how long after you've, it's currently the 26th of April that we're doing this interview. Down the track, there'll be paid platforms and ways to get your whole school involved and do it as more than just an individual. So reach out as we go.